Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Carrie and Dani. So, Carrie, I hear a vague rumor that while you were tidying up around your house or something, you found some articles of interest to show me.
I did. Uh Pathfinders.
Oh, what'd you find?
Well, so my grandmother, well, first of all, I was a Pathfinder, starting 10 years old all the way through um 14, 15, something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
my grandma would always have, did you guys have your investiture services at
Yes.
for school? And the Pathfinders were kind of all together. At least
Oh,
when I was a kid, so I don't know how they ran things for you, but here in the States, when I was a kid, the AY stuff, your Busy Bees, Sunbeam,
yeah.
Helping Hand, Builders, and then the Friend Companion, Voyager Ranger were all done at school. So the AY stuff was done at the church school, and then the Pathfinders, Adventurers did not exist up here then. Pathfinders
Oh,
was separate. So every year they would do an investiture service um, at Vespers or whatever in the evening, and the master guides would come up and give you your pins, your patches, your new scarves or whatever. And my grandmother was always front and center with her. She was a master guide, and she
yeah.
became and here's her scarf,
Oh, her yellow one with
her yellow one
all the stripes.
with the
Wow.
she would always wear a green dress, and she'd put her sash on, and she'd come up with all the other master guides and do that. And then I have her Pathfinder sash, because back in the day it was green. Now here in the US it's black.
Oh,
They changed from, did you wear tan shirts or were
um,
they white?
white.
White.
Yep.
We wore tan. It was tan and
Mm.
green.
Yep.
And then they changed it to black, I think when I was in college, maybe. But here's my grandma's Pathfinder sash. She kept everything. And so I was her power of attorney. And so when I'm going through all her stuff, of course I swiped the Pathfinder sash and kept it with everything. She also
Wow.
has the little, we never wore these. Did you guys ever wear the hat?
Yes. Yeah, we had hats. I wish I could put a picture. Our hats looked the same as that, the best I can tell. And when you're talking about wearing tan and like the green of your sash, we wore white shirts, and I remember our green being quite a rich green. But now that I see your hat, it looked pretty similar to that. I
Yeah,
should find my
probably.
pictures.
And I think when I was before I was in Pathfinder, so my folks were Pathfinder staff when I was little.
Yeah.
And the girls would wear the younger girls would wear all green, the older girls would wear white and green, the younger boys would wear, I think all the boys just wore solid khaki and they didn't have green pants. I don't remember for sure.
No, the okay, because the boys wore a different colored shirt, I'm sure. But I've got photos somewhere if I'd never thought of yeah.
Yeah, and I know that in different areas of the world they have different colors for their uniforms, but I one thing that fascinated me was I have her master guide record, what she had to do to become a master guide. And it inspired me to try to be a master guide. However, it was a lot easier back in the late 50s, early 60s. It was just the only reading that you had to do. I don't know. Did you ever look into Master Guide at all?
Um, so you had to have turned 16
Yep.
to be a master guide here in New Zealand and well the Australasia area. And so what happened was that I actually, because we moved from Australia to New Zealand, I ended up a year ahead of my age group at school.
Okay.
So I'd actually finished my secondary schooling at 15. And so at 16, I'd actually I'd started at Avondale College.
Hmm.
And I'd started my nurse's training, which I never
Wow.
finished. I hated it. It was the only thing that mum would pay for and help me out with because she wanted be a nurse because she wanted me to be a medical missionary. And I'm like, I don't want to be a nurse. I'm scared of needles. I don't want to be a missionary. I don't want to go to Africa.
Your
I
your
don't like the
mother
heat.
your mother sounds a lot like my grandma because she would pay my she kind of made my aunt become a nurse. But I mean, it really later on, it definitely, because of some circumstances, and if my aunt sees this, she's not going to argue with any of it, but some
Yeah.
circumstances that happened in her life later, it was amazing that she was a nurse and she was able to, support her family and different things. But it was definitely her mom was, if I remember correctly, kind of the driving force between nursing. So I think nursing profession has always been kind of held up in especially their generation as
Yeah.
being, but
Yeah. Mum wanted me to be a nurse.
looking at this, and I should have sat down and like made a comparison about the old master guide requirements and the new stuff. So this is from, I think the latest signature on here is from 1963.
Okay. Yep.
So the 60s. And then here's mine from when I tried.
And you said there was not much to it way back then.
No, no, there's just not a whole lot. It's mostly I'm doing some reading. You didn't have to write any papers or anything. A bunch of honors you needed to do. A little bit of Ellen White reading, um,
Yeah.
participating in a youth evangelistic program, which is part of the other thing. But the new one now is crazy hard. I started it, I think, 5 times as an adult and just didn't because it's so much reading. 2 paragraph summary on each of the 28 fundamental beliefs.
What?
Reading, yes, reading the Steps to Christ, reading a bunch of Ellen White stuff, and a bunch, just some other, just a lot of things, but a lot of reading, a lot of writing, and it says it has to be completed in a minimum of 1 year or a maximum of three. That's why I started 5 times because you had to
Ah.
get it done in a period of 3 years, and I never quite finished it. And to me, I'm like, why all of us, why do we have to make it harder to get these? The AY pins that you earn, I think there's much more complicated now as a kid than it was when I was a kid. Um, it's just very different how much stuff, and I kind of felt like it got to be kind of an indoctrination scheme, if that
Sounds viable.
sounds viable, especially with the master guide. And I pulled out, I have the current, I don't know if it's the current one, but ones that my kids did. And I didn't take the time to really see how much of Ellen White they needed to read, but I'm sure there's some early writings or different things in there that they needed to take care of. But I think in general, Pathfinders to me was a net positive experience. I mean, I enjoyed it enough as a kid that I attempted to start a couple different Pathfinder clubs. I was a director 2 different locations. It just never, the church culture just didn't really support it. That
Hmm.
was when my husband was still working for the church. I was adventurer director for 3 or 4 years when my husband was a pastor and the kids were in adventurers. I really enjoyed adventurers. I thought that was fun. But I Pathfinders, I liked the camping. I liked the craft aspect of it. I really loved Pathfinder Fair, where you got to see all the other all the other Pathfinders were doing.
Yeah.
Did you have to run relay races in your dress uniform with a skirt? Do you remember that? I had to.
No, I'm pretty sure we had sports uniforms. I'm sure we had I'm just trying to think. I'd have to go back through my old photos. I'm sure we had
They might
sports
have
uniform.
up here they had
Um,
what they called field uniforms. You wear blue jeans and a t-shirt.
oh, I remember shorts and t-shirts. All the t-shirts all had the logos.
Hmm.
Um, so you said you did Pathfinders through school.
Kind of through school, like the AY part was
Okay.
through school, and the Pathfinders was through the church.
Okay. Yep. So we didn't do any Pathfinders or anything through school. It was all
Okay.
through the churches. It was all through
Hmm.
church, and um, all the churches clubs had different color t-shirts with different logos and things on them, so you could tell them apart.
Hmm.
So when you had those big, we went and all got together and you ran relays. And
Yep,
did you
yep.
used to do the whole? Someone had to like fake an injury, and you had to. We used to have first. We used to have
First aid
first aid
competitions.
competitions. Yep, mixed into our relay race days, and to light a fire and cook a veggie sausage and stuff. So I remember doing it, but it was all done through church.
Hmm.
There was no component of it done at school, even though I went to the Adventist school.
Okay.
And I think it was because, so like in New Zealand, when I was at Auckland, when I went to
Hmm.
the Adventist high school there, the secondary schooling, I think there was only like 155 kids in the whole school.
Uh-huh.
But when they used to have Pathfinder rallies and something for the Auckland, even just for the Auckland like city, there'd be, I'm trying to think, 25 or 30 clubs with anything from 20 to 100 kids in each one. So it wasn't, couldn't be run through the schools because there wasn't enough schools to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's run through church. And you were talking about having your investiture and getting all your little badges and things on a Friday night Vespers program.
Maybe, or could have it was whenever the youth director for the conference was available to come down and do it. So the
Okay.
youth director from the state level conference would have to come, and so they'd have to schedule him. And it was in the
Yep.
evening because, of course, he's doing his tour across the whole state, and so they'd schedule it. It could be on a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, whenever, and so it'd be a little program at the church, you know.
Okay. So our ones were always done on Saturday as part of the church service.
Mm,
It was
mm,
always there was part of the church service, and so the Pathfinders would take the actual church service. So
hmm.
once a year, the Pathfinders would all march into church with our little flags, and people and all we'd all be given Bible readings, and we'd have to sing songs
Hmm. We would
and
do,
at the church,
there
and
was
then we'd get our investiture
investiture,
at the end.
and then there was Pathfinder Sabbath, and Pathfinder Sabbath could be sometime in the middle of the year, not always at the end. So it was two separate things for some reason. I'm sure other churches did it differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was sort of all mixed in together. Um, so yeah, yeah, I think I don't have a lot of strong memories of Pathfinders.
Hmm.
When I started Pathfinders in Melbourne, in Australia, and I do remember one of the clubs I went to. There was he wasn't a Pathfinder leader, but he was an elder in the church, and he'd been in the army, and so he came in, and because it's marching bands aren't a big thing, and like it is in America, but it's not in
The march
Australia.
and
But
drill stuff. Yeah.
yeah, it's not a big thing over there. I don't know anyone that had ever done it outside of Pathfinders, and then our club was one of the first ones back then to get into it. So they had this
Hmm.
old army guy from the army come in, and yeah, he taught us some fancy marching and drills and how to do it in rows of two and then rows of four and all the crossy stuff and so
Hmm.
you remember I remember him teaching us that. I'd have been quite young then.
I still have this, my drill
Oh dear,
manual.
never
I was
seen one.
I was a drill instructor the first year I was a staff member.
No, I'd never seen one, but I remember doing that and I remember the camps
Hmm. Yep.
over the summer especially when we were in Australia. Over the summer, I remember doing a camp a month.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
I remember we did lots of camps and hikes, and
Hmm.
here in New Zealand, I can remember doing quite a few weekend pack hikes. And we're walking up the beach between, beaches. a
Mm-hmm.
couple of days in between each one for access points
Mm-hmm.
and things like that, and camping out. So maybe a lot of camping, and the Australia ones specifically. I remember when we'd go out into the bush that we did a lot of stuff with ropes and knots. So we'd be collecting dead tree branches and learning all the knots and lashings and making big wooden towers. And I remember quite a few places we camping by rivers, and we had to make it would take the whole week. Well, not Saturday, of course, but it would take all of Sunday to make rope bridges and sling them across the rivers, and then we all had to walk over them, and so lots of things like that. And funny now that I think about it, there was an awful lot of trust exercises. They'd sling out ropes into the bush and then blindfold you all, and you'd have to walk along them without being able to see, and odd things.
Well, and in Australia, that seems kind of dangerous. Nature tries to kill you in Australia, doesn't it?
And in New Zealand, I mean,
And
not
New
so much in
Zealand.
New Zealand, but I remember doing a lot of trust stuff. So I'm just thinking about some of the 11, 12, and 13-year-olds that I know and that I've had even with teaching horse riding and stuff. And I can't imagine any of them reacting kindly to being blindfolded and told, here's a rope, follow it through the bush where you can't see anything. Trust you're not going to bang into anything and just slip and slide around a little bit holding onto it.
Hmm. I
So it's just something I'm going to have to think about that now because it was normal. I grew up with a lot of this stuff and it was normal. And if you, but we also know from the stuff we've read that high control religions often pressure cook trust. It's like it's forced. Revelations and sharing of stuff at an early ages is
mhm.
compulsory and forced. It's part of the whole.
Don't question
Yeah,
anything.
yeah,
Yeah, and I don't remember much like that. I know that we did have a hiking called orienteering where we had to go out and make marks in the dirt and try to find our way back and that
yeah.
kind of stuff. But that was, I think, when I was older, maybe eighth, well, only like eighth grade. I'm picturing who was with me and that which club
Yeah.
I was with, and I would remember when in history it was. Um, yeah, and the whole did they really do much like end times kind of drill type stuff with you? Like you remember, talking about like wild edible plants or how are you going to stay alive in the woods or any of that stuff, or was that ever really talked about?
And then this is where it gets funny, okay?
Yeah,
Because my initial instinctive answer to that is no, no, you didn't do any of that stuff. But,
but
but I've known since I was 6 years old. I was sold a dream at 6 years old that I thought was my own. If you'd said to me, is your dream connected to what you've learned at church? I'd have said no, but it is. So ever since I was 5 or 6 years old, I've known that I had to live in the bush or at least next to a state forest. I had to have a piece of land. I had to have my own water supply, either a creek that ran out of native bush and through rocks, because I learned all about purifying water, or it had to come from a spring. It was
Mhm.
better to have a spring because in the end times, there's going to be like acid rain, so you won't be able to drink the water that falls from the sky. I knew that I wasn't it would be good to have chickens, but I had to be prepared to live without chickens in the long term because in the end times, Ellen White says it's not going to be safe to eat eggs. Um,
That would make me sad. I like eggs.
um, and so I've known my whole life that I needed to have something like that. And I've known since I was, 9 or 10 years old that the creek or the spring that fed the little homestead I was going to live in had to be upstream of the house so that I could live without electricity and the water would gravity feed down to my veggie garden or I was going to starve and die. So it, it's not things are normal, child, I believe. and that the average normal child grows up knowing. But I've always known these things, and it's always been
Hmm.
my end goal. It's been my golden dream my whole life. Um, I can't say that Pathfinders directly sold it to me, but Pathfinders is where we did the stuff. It's where we did the camping and the hiking and the playing around with water and making little channels and
Learning how to
uh,
survive.
damming creeks, damming up creeks with rocks and diverting water flow. But
Hmm.
to me, it was just like fun games.
Hmm.
But yes, so it's one of those really weird things where it's hard to say I was taught it when I don't know any different. And I guess I still find it hard sometimes to figure out exactly. I guess I wonder if I'd grown up in just a normal Christian church, what goals and dreams I would have had. I think sometimes if I'd grown up in a normal Christian church, that I'd be a different, well, of course I would, I'd be a different person now. Um,
Yeah. And I
I'd
think,
certainly have more money and I would have a better career because I
yeah.
would have taken my dream job like 30 years ago. I would
Hmm.
have taken my dream job instead of going, oh no, I can't take that job because in winter I have to work till 5 o'clock and the sun sets earlier than that when we're this far south and stuff.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. I
and
ran into that
things.
when we lived up in Minnesota because the sun sets pretty early on a Friday night.
Yeah, we were down in Tasmania at times and stuff. And I just, yeah. And then I just dream jobs, that's a whole nother topic. Um,
Yeah.
I have I have some issues with my spine. I had a really bad motorbike accident.
Hmm.
So I have issues with my spine that leave me in permanent pain.
Hmm.
And so I do find, depending on how much back pain I'm in, I can actually like, wriggle and twitch more. And it started off, it's hard to stop now. It started off as just like stretching and trying to release the muscles because I
Hmm.
lived in low level pain all the time. And when we were in Auckland about 20 years ago, I went for something that would have been my dream job. And it was at a place that was already doing counseling work with horses, except they weren't really
Hmm.
doing counseling work because they had no qualified counselors. They just had they were doing like, skirting around the edges of it. And I went in there and applied for a job with them. And the lady that ran it was a Christian and they were right on the edge of town and they had amazing facilities and beautiful horses. And she'd said to me, we'd love to offer you a job. You would be perfect. We need somebody qualified here. And it was just down the road. And
Hmm.
then she said to me before I left, she said, here's the name, phone number and name of a church pastor that I know from, not an Adventist lady, different, I don't know what religion she was, but here's the name and number of a church pastor that I've known for quite a number of years. She said, if you just want to call and talk to him, and he'll cast the demon out of you that causes your shoulder to twitch, and then you can come and work for us.
That's
We've been
interesting.
friends for all these months, and you didn't know it was a demon causing me to wriggle, did you?
Yeah, let's end this call. No, I'm kidding.
So back to Pathfinders. Crazy. I got to share this. My favorite memory of a Pathfinder camp was in Melbourne, and I would have been about 11 years old. And it was a camp, what are the big camporees where
Yep.
all like the whole area wide ones? It was a huge one of those. And it was a winter one. And it was freezing. It was freezing.
Mhm.
There was frost a couple of inches thick on the ground, and it was just, oh, it was just terrifying. It was so cold. And one of the guys in our club had found a wee frozen bat and he'd picked it up and carried it back to the campfire to show us all.
Hmm.
And I'll never ever forget. Um, it defrosted and came back to life. And we ended up putting it back in the bush. So I sort of think about camporees. It's funny the things that I get excited about. So my favorite memory was in Melbourne when we defrosted the bat. It came
Oh,
back to life and we put it back in the bush.
I loved the camporees and the camping and stuff. And I've been to three of the big international ones that they do here in the US. I
Hmm.
was at the Friendship Camporee in 89. I think that was only the second one they did. That was in Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
And so that was a lot of fun. And then I went to Forever Faithful. That was in Oshkosh in 2014. And then this one was 2019 chosen. Um I uh it was crazy. Like that many people. Um in Gillette, Wyoming is where they had the last one, and they had some nasty storms go through. The A lot of tents were destroyed and flooded out, and it's kind of just chaos, that many kids in one spot, but it was just powerful being around that many, and you're part of this worldwide organization, which was really cool in a way. And now stepping back from that a little bit more, it makes me think a little bit more about the uniforms. What are we trying to portray? Um, I and I had a gentleman I had a conversation with, and he's been a very active Pathfinder staff member for years, and this conversation was well over a decade
Mhm.
ago. And he said, you're talking about adornment, and vanity and all of these things. And we were just chit-chatting back and forth about stuff. And he said he had to strip down his Pathfinder uniform because he felt like with all of the pins and badges and all of that stuff, because he was very, he had all the ribbons, all the stuff on there. And he felt like that was
Yeah.
just so much adornment that he needed to cut back on that because of his pride and what he had accomplished. And I thought that was just really powerful because you look around and you see, and it's cool, but it's a display of your accomplishments, and so how is that not adornment, what they've argued against my whole growing up years? So all of that shiny stuff is fine if it's on your uniform, but don't you dare put it around your neck or stick it in your ears.
That's crazy when you say that. And yeah, I remember I definitely had a lot of because when we moved to New Zealand from Australia, I had a lot of badges. I'd done a lot of honors, so I
Hmm.
had more than a lot of people, and I thought I was pretty cool because of that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and me too. I have plenty of stuff on there. I have some I haven't even put on my sash because I just haven't gotten the machine out to do it. And I will at some point just so I don't lose them. Um, but it's what are we, and I don't think there's any answer to that. What's the point?
What's the
I don't
point? I
know.
don't know. I guess it's I always thought Pathfinders was, and I remember it being said. I remember hearing it many, many times at church. And of course, it starts quite young when you do the Adventist, that with the busy bees and all the little things as well, but
Hmm.
the adventurers and stuff. And I was told over and over and over my whole life in the church, the Jesuits say, and they used to quote it as being a Jesuit quote, not as an Adventist one. Give me a child till they're 12 and we'll have them for life.
Hmm.
So I just, was that not something you heard all the time?
Yeah. I mean, it was part of the whole, keep them in, and as an adult, I enjoyed doing that. I mean, I would enjoy probably being part of a similar organization again. I liked it. I enjoyed teaching the kids crafts. I enjoyed doing crafts as a kid, all of that stuff. I wish though that so much of the Ellen White reading was not part of the checking boxes, it was part of the kids thing. And I don't, and again, my experience with Pathfinders personally was a net positive. I enjoyed it. I think I learned a lot of good skills. I know how to camp. I probably would have known anyway because my parents were, they camped quite a bit and stuff, but
Yep.
I don't know if there's a good ending with with all of this, but I thought it was kind of a fun conversation. If anybody has any fun Pathfinder stories they want to add, or anything they want to talk about regarding Pathfinders, just let us know. Um, I know that oh, one other thing I could show. Well, I'll have to do a little more digging into this, but I found this at my husband's great aunt's place. It's the 1938 edition of the Junior Handbook for the Junior Missionary Volunteers. It talks about because it used to,
Um,
instead of being called guide and master guide, it was comrade and master comrade.
oh, I don't recall that.
They changed that for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
But that's something I want to sit and do another little look through because that's more of the early history of the Pathfinder and or the missionary volunteers as they were called at that time. But I found
yeah.
this at her house when we were cleaning that out a few years ago. But um it was a great program, I think, you know. Anything more you want to add about Pathfinders?
Um, Maybe, but I'm going to refrain for now.
Something
Um,
will come up in a later conversation, it sounds like our faithful
yeah,
viewers here.
yeah, we'll work around to it later. It, I enjoyed the camping.
Hmm.
I just listening to you talk about the camporees and the big get-togethers and stuff, Carrie, and because you were involved with it as an adult, and I have no involvement past the age of 16.
Hmm.
Apart from, I did start teaching the horse riding on it to some of the kids at one of the other places we went to. Um, but listening to you talk, I'm wondering if you stopped to actually think about it, and it sounds like you sort of really haven't. I'm wondering how much grief there is sitting behind that. I mean, I know you go to a super church, which is really large, but when I see how excited you get talking about being part of something that is just so big,
Yeah.
um, just wondering if you stopped to think about it, that if you actually had stopped to consider
Oh,
how sad you might feel, potentially to the
yeah.
same level that you felt excitement about being part of something that was so large.
Yeah, and there's definitely some grief there. Mike Colburn had put on his blog or something, the Thinking Cup, he had posted an article just about the grief of leaving the church. And that's part of it. It's this whole thing because I feel like, I could show up down in New Zealand somewhere, have a conversation with anybody in Adventist church, and I would come up with two or three people that we were connected with somehow. I don't
Yeah.
have that anymore. Like I could still go and still have that conversation, but since I'm no longer officially part of the church, it's a little bit different. But there's definitely a grief there
Yeah.
to where this is such a cool program and such a major part of my life as a kid and as an adult, that now that's something else, try to find it as something to fill that
Yeah.
space, which is definitely there's some grief with that for sure.
I actually read that same article by Mike Colburn as well, and he was
Hmm.
quoting some other people, I think, in his article. He just collected the information and put it together and applied it to himself. And maybe in a future thing, we should come back and talk about that because
Hmm.
it helped me understand. It helped me. It was like a little light bulb moment, and it was a really silly little one. But the light bulb moment was, oh, someone was coming to visit me, and the first thing I did was go to the kitchen and start cleaning and putting the dishes away like a crazy because I didn't want them to see my house was a mess. And then I suddenly realized that the reason my house was a mess and I've been struggling with some of this stuff is because now that I'm not going to church on Friday, since leaving the Adventist church, um, I've let go of my cleaning structure. That sounds crazy, but if you think about
No,
it, okay,
I
the cleaning structure was Friday. I've been
hmm.
taught ever since I was a child. I remember talking about this in Pathfinders because it also crossed over from home to camping. Friday is preparation day.
Hmm.
You get everything ready for the Sabbath, including having your house clean and tidy so when visitors come,
Yep.
it's all sorted. And I realized that I've lost part of my rhythms of my part of the rhythms of life that I've had for over 50 years, and that was one of
Yeah.
them.
We've got to come up with new routines, I
It was just
guess.
a little
But
crazy thing. Yep, just there was just a little crazy thing, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's
yep,
where that's gone and where
yeah,
it came from.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm.
I'm right there with you. I can't remember what day of the week it is sometimes because I'm like, what day is it? So we just have a couple more minutes to wind things up, Danny. So Um, I think that's a great to topic for a future one is just the grief of how do you make your life routine, or what are some things you missed most that you want to fill with something else, or it's difficult. And I think there's so many reasons why people stay in the Adventist church, even if they might have doubts. One, they're not taught to actually lean into their doubts and maybe investigate. But then also there's such a worldwide structure of feeling like home, like you're with people that understand you and to a certain extent. Um,
Yeah.
it
And
becomes
I think that's the
comfortable.
power of Pathfinders.
Hmm.
The power
Hmm.
of Pathfinders. So as soon as you said that, the sense of belonging and feeling like home, that's the power of Pathfinders for a kid, and it runs through to 16.
Hmm.
Most children that end up joining gangs join in primary school.
Hmm.
Not all of them, but I mean, a lot of the kids I was working with were all joining gangs,
Hmm.
from the ages of, or being primed to join a gang and funneled into the pre-gangs from 8 and 9 years old through to being
Hmm.
firmly enmeshed by the time they got to 14 and 15. And Pathfinders is like a little gang,
Hmm. It is. It is.
except it's just a better quality one. It doesn't get you into trouble. It keeps you out of trouble with the law. And
Hmm.
I just see so many positive things for it. I just have some concerns about where it's trying to funnel you into long term.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, I love it. I mean, to me, I was so proud of it. I used to say to people, Pathfinders is awesome. It's like if you took the Girl Guides and the Boy Scouts and put them together because we don't separate up the sexes.
Right. Except during camping. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah. Well, it's time to sign off, everybody. Like and subscribe, leave us some comments, tell us your stories. We would love to hear from you. Um, we'll catch you next time. Have a great day, guys.